Hello and welcome, everyone. We are talking about an election that sometimes doesn't get much attention in the national news, and that is not only a municipal election, but a primary election. But this one has a lot to dig into, so I'm excited to be here. I'm Celia Nolan. I'm the Training and Events Director with Rank the Vote. And we have some fun conversations coming up. So I have with me today David Green from Unite New York and Terry Altherr from Massachusetts, but canvassing in New York. We'll get to that story too. And Alison Hirsh, campaign manager for Brad Lander, candidate for New York City Mayor. So go ahead and use the chat if you have it. If you have questions now, if you have questions as we have our conversations, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can. And also, I want to invite you to our next meeting, which will be in a couple of weeks, September 24th, at the same time. Rank the Vote's Executive Director, Eileen Reevy, and I will be talking about house parties. This is something that everyone can do. Invite your friends, have a good time, get people money and endorsements, powering the movement, and Rank the Vote has a whole toolkit that you can use to jumpstart your parties, and we can help you all along the way. So that'll be a fun one too. Um, but we do have a lot to talk about. So before we get to New York City, I want to kind of pull back a little bit because there's a lot happening all around the state. And the person who knows all about that is David Green. He's the statewide organizing director for Unite New York. So, David, I'm going to hand it right over to you. What's going on in the state?
Yeah, thanks so much, Celia. It's so good to be here with a bunch of RCV fans from across the country. I see lots of familiar faces. I'm David Green from Unite New York. We are an organization focused on ranked choice voting, and that's why we're partners with Rank the Vote. I formerly worked at Rank the Vote, but we are focused on ranked choice voting in addition to four other pillars of reform. So we, across the state, promote and educate about ranked choice voting, opening up our closed primary system that we have in New York. If you're not affiliated with a party, either major party, you can't participate in primaries in New York State. So we're trying to improve that. Term limits, we don't have any in New York State. Better citizen ballot initiatives. We don't have any process for having citizen ballot initiatives in New York State. So making some sort of process. And then better ballot access for non-major party candidates. Because we have some of the worst ballot access in the country. And so we are working on that all over. Just to highlight some areas where we've made some progress. We had an exciting launch last week of Ranked Choice Voting Albany. So in the state capitol, pulling together some activists who are really excited about making it happen with the Common Council and the county legislature. And so we're excited to build on that and have more gatherings. I'll be doing some local canvassing here in Albany in a couple days. And then out in Western New York, we have an awesome RCV coalition that has come together, and it has the League of Women Voters, it has Voice Buffalo, the Partnership for the Public Good. There's a wide array of groups that have come together and keep on signing on. The list gets longer and longer of Western New York groups around Erie County that are just excited to make ranked choice voting happen because there's a lot of broken politics out west, and it seems like a really strong fix, especially if we can maybe go proportional, maybe combine it with open primaries. There's a lot of possibility there. So we're excited to start some petitioning processes to just show support to the city council there and the county legislature around these issues. So that's all very exciting. And then in the legislature, we, like probably many of you, are working on writing, editing legislation here in this off season before the legislative session starts up in January again to get some good legislation around ranked choice as well as other issues. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be here. I do want to say, if you are tuning in from New York because you heard this was a New York City-ish thing, I do want to put our event calendar in chat. We're having our every other month we have a statewide meeting, and we're having that virtually next week. So definitely, if you want to come chat, hang out with us, that'd be a really great opportunity. So, but there's also plenty of other events. Yeah, but definitely check out your state's events too. Go to the events. There are lots of great ranked choice voting groups. It's awesome. Yeah, happy to talk more, but yeah, I'll pass it back to Celia.
Thanks, David. So much going on around the state, and David's going to stay with us. So if you have questions for David too, put them in the chat. And so now let's turn to the city. And so there was you've probably heard about this New York City mayoral election, right? And if you haven't, I actually want to show you a campaign video that is definitely unlike any campaign video that I've ever seen in my home state of Massachusetts. Because where I live, we don't use ranked choice voting. There are cities that use it in Massachusetts, but not where I am. So I'm just going to share a little campaign video if I can. And I'd love to see, you can put in the chat, like, what do you think of it? Have you seen anything like this? Would you like to see anything like this? Here we go.
Hey, good morning.
How's it going?
Please go second.
No, I insist you go second.
How about I go first and you go second?
Well,
We both love New York City.
and that's why it's so important to not send scandal-ridden, corrupt Andrew Cuomo to City Hall.
New Yorkers deserve so much better than a disgraced creep.
Agreed.
Zohran, you've done a remarkable job building a historic grassroots campaign for a New York City all New Yorkers can afford.
Brad, you've been a principled progressive leader in our city for years.
Early voting starts tomorrow, and we both know what we need to do to save our city from Andrew Cuomo. You want to tell him?
You go first.
Nah, you go first.
Let's do it together. We're cross-endorsing.
In New York City, we have ranked choice voting. That means you can rank up to 5 candidates for mayor.
Brad and I are officially telling our supporters.
Rank
You're
me number one, rank
Rank Brad.
Zohran number 2. Let's send Andrew Cuomo.
Back to the suburbs. Hey,
Good morning.
how's it going?
All right, so here we have two major candidates, primary opponents, who are doing a commercial together. It's, they're still making it clear who they are as candidates. They're not making a coalition with all the candidates, right? There's still opposition in there. The ranked choice voting's not making this campaign just be, middle of the road. Candidates are still speaking strongly, but they're also able to find commonality and work together. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go next to someone who was a canvasser for one of those campaigns and has a lot of experience, I know, in non-ranked choice voting campaigns. So we're going to go to Terry Altherr. And Terry, can you give us a little of your background and why you were drawn to, to volunteer for these campaigns, and how is it different from your past experience?
Absolutely. So, hi everybody. Good evening. So great to see you all here. My name is Terry Altherr. I'm involved in Voter Choice Massachusetts. I live in Newton, so I'm very involved in progressive causes and politics. I'm involved in the local Democratic Party and our state Democratic Party. I'm also involved in countless activist groups like Sunrise, obviously Voter Choice Massachusetts, as well as the local chapter of Boston of DSA, Boston DSA. So for me, I've done a lot of work on campaigns, whether they be for candidates such as Bob Massey, who was a strong supporter of ranked choice voting in 2018, Tammy Gouveia, who ran for lieutenant governor in 2022, and for like always trying to engage in electoral work such as the Essex County Community Organization, ECHO, which supported the Fair Share Amendment in 2022, as well as the the Safe Mobility Act as well too, or Freedom to Ride, Freedom to Drive in 2022 as well. So for me, I was very interested in the New York race because most municipalities in Massachusetts, as Celia alluded to, do not use ranked choice voting. Some, like Cambridge and is it East Hampton that uses ranked choice voting? Yeah, East Hampton, they do. And I think Amherst is going to start using ranked choice voting as well. So, but like New York, they don't use ranked choice voting except in their primaries. And I was very interested because, as I mentioned before, I'm a member of DSA, and the New York City chapter of DSA had endorsed Zohran, who has been a 3-term assemblyman for mayor. And I was really interested to see what would happen because normally it would be very difficult to have someone like Zohran run because of the fact that most people don't necessarily want a 3-term assemblyman, or unless it's like they've served in the assembly for a couple decades, and others prefer people who have more experience in city politics. But I think because of the ranked choice voting structure, there are folks who, even if they necessarily didn't want Zoran as their number one pick, they were moved by like the issues that he ran on, and as well as his youthful experience in transformational politics. So there were folks who were open to ranking him as their second or third choice. And, rather than having a situation like in 2020 where politicians and activists believe that Bernie and Warren split the progressive vote and ended up feuding towards the end of the primary rather than trying to unite the party. Um, in New York City, at least what I saw was that a lot of, the progressive slate, they were able to really work together and encourage folks to rank for other candidates for like other preferences. Obviously, Brad Lander and Zoran really work closely with each other. So I was very interested to see what it would look like. So at the end of May, that last weekend in May, or I guess the first weekend in June, because it was from May 30th to the June 1st, I did some canvassing for Zoran, and then I came back for GOTV. So I came back for that last weekend and then stayed until Tuesday night. And it was really a great experience. I even got to meet Zohran Mamdani. So I even have the photo of it here if folks are interested as well, where after Zohran did his late night walk um, throughout um, throughout New York. Um, I got to meet him at the end in the at I think it was Battery Park. So there's me there not posing correctly, and then there's me posing correctly. And then I got to take a quick selfie with Zoran, so that was a lot of fun. And then you can see there's a bunch of other photos I took during the trip of canvases, just meeting up with folks, taking photos of all the food. But I think what was really cool was we there was this big rally that the Working Families Party held in Crown Heights for the entire slate. So you can see there's an activist there. There's Zoran. There's Adrian Adams, who was also on that slate with Zoran. And then there's Zelnor Myrie, another candidate on the slate. Brad Lander, and another volunteer from the Working Families Party. So this was a really great rally. A lot of fun, obviously, with the message of not ranking Cuomo. So there were a lot of folks who came and spoke. One of the highlights in this rally was we had um, I don't know, I think it was Assemblywoman. We had Crystal Hudson come speak. So she had a really great spiel talking about how how to encourage folks to like rank all the candidates. So this is her originally with her Zoran shirt, which was her first choice. Then she took off the Zoran shirt, showed with Lander as her second choice, um, and then took that off to show an Adrian Adams shirt as her third choice, then a Zelnor Myrie shirt as her fourth choice. So it was really great to see all the energy, excitement. It was a really great rally. I'm sure there's a video of it, so I could show more. And I also got to meet with Brad Lander as well after the rally briefly, although he had to rush to an event. So that was really great. And
Right.
there
So
was a lot of fun there. Is there anything else I should add there, or do you think that's a pretty good report back?
that's great from those campaign events. I'm wondering, can you remember encounters when you were talking to folks on the street? Maybe they were, their first choice was another candidate, or just talking about how the race would go. What was that person to person canvassing experience like?
Yeah, so the first time I was there was tough because I could only canvass on Saturday since I had to be back on Sunday for an event. And by bizarre luck, I ended up having being assigned a Hasidic neighborhood during Shabbat. So we ended up, lit dropping because, obviously I don't want, you don't want to anger voters by like canvassing during their religious day off. So I didn't really get much interaction that first time around, but like when I came back for GOTV leading up to the election, there are definitely voters who are very like interested in Zoran. There are those who were going to follow the slate. So there are folks who already were going to vote for Zoran as their first overall pick. Or if it wasn't Zoran, they'd be like, oh, we're going to rank Brad first, or we're going to rank Adrian Adams. Some more ambivalent. But like, I think it definitely helped because, rather than trying to like, play territorialism on like, oh, you're be on this lane or else, or like, I need you to be in this lane. It was like more like, are you gonna, do you support Zohran? Where do you rank him? Or, if you're not gonna rank him first, like where will you rank him? And it was very like, it was really good. There's a lot of energy, a lot of positive messaging, because I will tell you, um, the messaging from Cuomo was a lot of negativity, kind of like tired talking points, and it wasn't very persuasive. I also took some photos of his literature being scattered all over the place, like at train stations on the ground. So I'm not going to show those for time, but
Okay.
it felt really good. And then on election night, I think most folks were like, Zoran won't finish like with the most votes in the first round, but like, Zoran will still like, if he does well in the first round, that means he'll, RCV will play out. And everyone at the party, election night party, was shocked when it turned out Zoran finished with the actual outright plurality of the vote. And then when Cuomo conceded, I did take photos of everyone just like absolutely losing their, I'm not going to say the swear word, but you know what word I'm talking about. Um, celebrating, and then, seeing the week later, with RCV confirming that Zoran had won with after all preferences were counted. So it was a really great experience. It felt very positive. It felt really energetic. And,
Yeah, that energy, what you're talking about is wonderful. And that energy with the canvassing, that people are willing to talk about more and, have discussions and be aware of multiple candidates is fantastic. So thank you so much. This is what we hope for with ranked choice voting, and it's great to hear that your experience matched up with that. So thanks
thank you
for
so much.
being here. And if you can stick around, if anyone has more questions
Yeah.
about the inside, thank you, Terry, for being with us. And I'm so delighted to have Brad Landers, campaign manager, with us. She is on the go, I believe, with Brad right now. So hopefully at least the audio will work. But we all have so much to do, and I really appreciate Alison Hirsh being with us. She is a seasoned New York City labor and policy strategist. After serving as political director and vice president of 32 BJ SEIU for 12 years, she served as senior advisor under Mayor Bill de Blasio and in the New York City Department of Education. She then went on to serve as senior advisor on Mila Wiley's 2021 campaign for New York City Mayor. That was the first ranked choice voting campaign of all in New York City. This year is the third cycle. And in 2022, she became Chief Strategy Officer and Assistant Comptroller for Pensions under Comptroller Brad Lander, leading pension oversight, ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance, labor policy, and strategic planning for the Comptroller's Office. In late 2024, she left government service to manage Brad Lander's mayoral campaign, executing the first of its kind successful cross endorsement under New York City's ranked choice voting structure. So, Allison, we have so much to talk about. If you're able to, can you say hello and maybe tell us a little bit about how you started with ranked choice voting campaigning?
Sure, and I hope you guys can hear me. I really apologize. Today, Brad actually was asked to testify at a congressional hearing. So we went down to DC and we drove back up, and I'm actually sitting in his car without him outside of an event where Brad and Zohran are being jointly honored for their cross endorsement. So it's just a slightly worse service than I would hope I had. So I apologize for being in a dark space and off camera. But yes, it's very on theme. I really appreciate being invited here and to talk about this, because I think, when Brad entered this race for mayor, when you run a campaign, you run a campaign to win. And Brad ran with the vision and experience to be the mayor of New York City. And the idea when initially, when he first got elected for comptroller, I think he did not expect to run for mayor, but I don't know how much you all follow New York City politics, but the last 4 years have not been the best with Eric Adams. And, he decided to put his hat in the ring. And then a few months after Brad ran, announced, Zohran decided to run, as did a few other candidates. And then Andrew Cuomo, who is the former disgraced former governor of New York, governor for 12 years, had to resign based on a variety of sexual harassment and COVID-related scandals. And for those of us who've been working in New York State and New York City politics for a long time, a terrible sociopathic human being, just like not somebody who is in politics for the purpose of serving anyone other than himself, decided to run. And he became immediately the front runner. And most of the political establishment deemed him unbeatable, right? Most of the progressive labor movement, including my former union, endorsed him, because the thing about Andrew Cuomo is he is incredibly vindictive. And so no one wanted to be on his bad side when he inevitably ran. And then there were those of us, a cadre of people, including the Working Families Party, including Brad, including Zohran, including Adrienne Adams and down there, who said, no, 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 no. This is not the politics that we're going to move forward with. And this is not the politics that New York City residents deserve. And just to backtrack for a minute, Brad actually won his comptroller's race in the first ranked choice voting election 4 years ago. And as Celia mentioned, I was senior advisor to Maya Wiley in 2021 on her mayor's race. And I can tell you that one thing that happened in that campaign was that it was the first time we'd ever run a ranked choice voting election. And none of the candidates and none of the campaigns really understood how to do it. And we didn't have a muscle of trusting each other enough to work together at the times where it might make sense for either one of us or both. And so, you know, when Brad announced he was running, he and I sat down and talked. And one thing he has said and I have said is that if Maya Wiley and Catherine Garcia had cross-endorsed each other 4 years ago, Andrew Cuomo would not be, Eric Adams would not be mayor. You know, in 2021, Eric got the most number of first choice votes. Maya got the second highest number of first ranked votes. And then over the course of, I think, 7 rounds of ballot counting, Catherine surpassed Maya in the last round and came within 7,000 votes of beating Eric Adams, 7,000 votes. So if those two had cross-endorsed, Eric Adams would not be mayor. And Brad was always committed to a strategy to ensure that neither Eric Adams nor Andrew Cuomo became mayor of New York City. And so from the beginning, Brad was an active participant in the Working Families Party ranked the slate strategy from even before he announced WFP meetings of candidates and potential candidates to talk about how to work together. Always committed to come together at the end. I would say the challenge that occurred with WFP strategy, I think they would say this as well, is like everyone was on board with the initial, like, we're going to have an unranked slate of 4, right? Like that was easy. The process of then getting to a point where there was actual rankings within that slate proved to be much harder. And partially because there were no rules, guidelines, or expectations around it. And it sort of became a free-for-all of everybody fighting, you know, to be first choice. And then as we got closer, it became very clear in poll after poll and conversation after conversation that there's Andrew Cuomo in the lead, and then Zohran and Brad. And depending on the poll, Zohran was closer and Brad was farther behind, or Brad and Zohran were a little closer to each other. But it became very clear that, you know, Brad and Zohran needed to come together if we had a chance of beating Andrew Cuomo. And it was not easy, right? Like, you know, on a campaign, you know, we had good superficial, I would say, relationships with the campaign and between the two camps, for lack of a better word, where we would talk to each other about certain things. At one point, we tried working with the Zohran campaign. We were the only ones with enough money to compete with Andrew Cuomo. And so we tried to work together to see if there was a any interest in going in jointly on anti-Cuomo ads. That sort of didn't work out. And so it was, it was not easy always to come to sort of an agreement on what the cross endorsement could look like. And so about 2.5 weeks before Election Day, we sat down and said, look, there are sort of 3 outcomes here that are possible. And we need to make sure we do everything in our power to make sure that the worst, the Andrew Cuomo outcome, does not happen. And there were risks. I mean, to Terry's point about often DSA candidates and DSA and progressives don't always align and work together. There's a big Brad is Jewish and a a liberal Zionist. Zohran is Muslim and an anti-Zionist. And there was a lot of pressure amongst a certain cadre of Brad supporters to not support Zohran and cross-endorse Zohran, either because of issues surrounding the Middle East and anti-Semitism, the anti-Semitism accusations, I believe strongly to be false, or around the fact that a lot of Brad supporters are sort of technocrats, right? Like people who are like, we need somebody who is a manager and knows how to run city government, quote unquote, right? And what is Zohran? Zohran's only been in the assembly for 3 terms. Like, how does he know how to run this massive bureaucracy? And so there's a lot of pressure not to do this. And Brad was like, I will not be able to look myself in the mirror if we do not try to come together and defeat Andrew together. And so the evening before the second debate, we sort of all broke bread, Zohran's campaign manager, me and Brad, and sort of a mutual trusted intermediary, all sort of broke bread and discussed it. And then it was a few hours before the second debate that we decided we were going to all Brad and Zohran both agreed that we were going to move ahead. Obviously didn't want to make that public until after the debate. But Brad and Zohran did a really good job teaming up on the stage against Andrew. A lot of people in the New York political world say that debate is the moment that Andrew Cuomo started losing. And then the next morning at 6:45 in the morning, Brad and Zohran went to Central Park and filmed that video that Celia showed at the beginning. And then a New York Times story came out about 4 hours later, and then we put the video out into the world. And I will say, like, when we decided to move forward, it was about electoral math, right? It was about, it's not cynical, but it was really about, how do we beat Andrew? And like, this is how the math is going to have to work. When that video went out online, it was like, it unleashed a hope and optimism in the city that like we just haven't seen since COVID, really, right? Like that, oh, wait a minute, a different kind of politics is actually possible. One that doesn't tear each other down over petty squabbles and self-righteousness, but one that really can connect and come together for the greater good. And so it was incredibly powerful. There were memes going around like, ranked choice, the cure for male loneliness is ranked choice.
I think we can all finish that sentence. I think we may have lost Alison for a bit. Hopefully she'll be back. But
Can you hear me?
You're back. Yes. You were at the cure for male loneliness.
I lost you.
We lost you for a minute too. So actually let's take a pause on that. Maybe your connection will get a little stronger. Something you said reminded me of a video of Brad's that I saw, and I have that queued up too. So I would love to play that too, because it's fascinating that as the campaign was developing, I was going to ask you, where every campaign has to pivot from time to time and adjust. And this was such a revelation, but that it started with the numbers game, right? Usually campaigns start with like, what's your win number? How do we get there? Right? Break it down. And so it started with that, realizing that the math of the campaign had to take into account that a coalition was necessary with ranked choice voting. But then, you had a realization, and Brad talked about a realization like that too. So I want to cue up that video because this one really struck me. Let's see if I can get it.
Family's Party had created a slate of four of us, but that wasn't really proving to have quite enough energy to really assemble a majority coalition of voters. And it looked like Andrew Cuomo was on path to win. And it was clear to me that what I had said about Maya and Catherine was true about me. It was necessary to cross endorse if we were going to build a majority to beat Andrew. And look, that wasn't easy to do in part because it was clear by then, just given the polling, that Zohran was in a stronger place to beat Andrew than I was. But it still felt clear to me he is a person of decency and integrity. He ran a very compelling race on issues of affordability. And that the right thing to do was to come together and assemble our voters into a coalition that would have enough votes to beat him. When we did that, I mean, I went into it a little thinking of it like ranked choice math. But I have to say something really lovely happened, which is voters responded with, wow, politics doesn't have to be like a ego-driven, sour, selfish thing. You could do it like a team sport where what you cared about was the future of our city. And it felt more like solidarity than like ranked choice math.
So that so jumped out to me, right? Was that at first it was the math, and then it felt more like solidarity than ranked choice math. And, having been involved in candidate campaigns myself, like there's infighting in the primary, there's urging after the primary to show unity, or after the general election to try to put a bitter campaign behind you. But how extraordinary that during a primary, there's a sense of unity and coalitions. Just so unusual, nothing like I've ever experienced. All right, good. I see some questions coming in, so let me know. And we'll see. And do we still have Allison? I think I saw her up. Allison, you are still there. Do you have any comment on that video? Had you seen that interview before?
Yes, I have. And I will say this is, I'll obviously speak for Brad to about Brad for a moment, but, I would say as Brad's campaign manager, so, and publicly before, he's actually better at sports than individual, is deeper and bullish topic. And so in many ways, actually for him, it like released the best of him and was freed to be his best
Mm-hmm.
who are comfortable with being in the spotlight.
And sorry, Allison, you're breaking up. At least for me, you're breaking up. Unfortunately, I'm going to drop the link to that video, to the video in the chat. I did hear, right, that it encourages rather than, campaigns often encouraging attacks and bitterness and kind of bringing out the worst in people, that this was a campaign that brings out the best in you as a candidate. So unfortunately, I'm having a hard time with that audio. We can try you again in a minute. I don't know if you're able to find a different location. But I'm looking through these chat questions. And all right, and actually we had a question that was submitted before the meeting that was asking about how to talk about ranked choice voting, just in general, were there materials and wanting to have materials to help explain ranked choice voting to people. So I was glad to see that. Rank the Vote can definitely help you with that. I'm sure there are New York materials too, and I'll ask Allison about that. We can share them afterwards. Rank the Vote also has a meeting every Thursday. You can join us to learn a pitch, and we also have online a training portal that has all that information too. So I will drop those links in the chat, and there are videos you
Can
can watch on tips and materials too. Go ahead.
can I say one thing? And I truly apologize about my service. Hopefully I'm in a slightly better spot.
You sound
One of
great.
the things that one of the things that really worked was like just remember that like people digest information these days differently. So like whereas 4 years ago we did a lot of flyers and about ranked choice votings and static graphics. You know, this year like we just like did a ton of video explainers that were like made them super fun. And I think Zohran actually did a great one that I can't even remember what he was using as an example, but it was like grocery shopping or something. It's like, yes, the Mango Lassie video, exactly. So he did like a great, like, this is how ranked choice voting works. Explainer that it makes it fun and really like connects. And I would encourage doing, you know, making it, you know, as fun as you can so people don't get bored.
Yeah, that definitely does not seem like a boring campaign, that's for sure. And we have a question from the chat. Given your experience after this cross endorsement, would you recommend that groups like the Working Families Party always produce a ranked endorsement, or stick with a rank these candidates approach if they can't come up with a consensus?
I think it really does depend on the nature of the specific election. Like I am not sure the outcome would have been different if the WFP had not ended up ranking Zohran 1 and Brad 2. If they had kept the slate unranked, I'm not sure the outcome would have been different. I do actually think that the cross endorsement between Brad and Zohran would have been less impactful because it would have been less unexpected. But I would say it really just does depend on the nature of the election and the facts on the ground.
Yeah. I'm wondering with this campaign, did you have a campaign plan? Did you just kind of tear it up and, go along? How much were you able to pre-plan and sort of, keep on top of what was happening? Because you were getting major media, like this thing blew up.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I would say. I think any campaign plan, this is true in my experience in electoral campaigns and legislative campaigns, whatever. The purpose of a good campaign plan is to keep you on track towards your strategic goals and to ensure that as unexpected facts emerge or issues that impact your campaign or candidate emerge, you can strategically assess whether and how to pivot, right? Like if you don't have a plan, then you're in constant reaction mode and you might be, spending all your time. I don't know if you guys like, the quadrants of organizational focus, right? Important and urgent, important, not urgent, not important, not urgent, not important, urgent. Like you can easily on a campaign spend all of your time in quadrant 4, not important, not urgent. And you want to spend 0% of your time on that. And so a strong campaign plan allows you to work on the important, not urgent things so that when new urgent things happen, you are set up and in a position to capitalize on them. And so I feel like that's what I'm most proud of. It's like, I don't think it was in our campaign plan when we started to necessarily cross endorse Zohran. In fact, I think there was at the beginning, like a concern because of the nature of a lot of some of the disagreements there. And so when that became, it's like, okay, how does this fit into our strategic goals? Does this work? And then when we made the cross endorsement, when we made the cross endorsement, we kind of blew up the schedule for the last 2 weeks because we're like, oh, we need them to spend as much time together as possible because it also happened that 4 days after the cross endorsement, like in a completely unrelated government episode, Brad was very violently arrested by ICE while protecting immigrants. So that also blew, like the combination of those two things really, blew up our campaign. It was actually when I got the call that Brad had been arrested, I was on the phone with Zohran's campaign manager because that night, Brad and Zohran were supposed to canvass in Park Slope together and go to a Liberty game together. And we were planning for like the hysteria that would be at the Barclays Center for the Liberty game, because there are no two people that Liberty fans like more. And I got a call from Brad's wife, and I was like, hold on 1 second, because she didn't usually call me in the middle of the day. And she was like, Brad just got arrested. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go. And so it was like and Zohran was one of the first electeds to show up outside of the federal courthouse to stand up and condemn Brad's arrest. So, you know, the last 2 weeks sort of we had to rejigger a bit.
And for your voter outreach plan, especially as compared to previous campaigns where you didn't have to consider RCV, did you have a wider universe there? Did you have different voter education efforts? And this is a guest submitted question. Based on different communities or locations.
Yeah, I mean, look, the truth is, in any ranked choice voting election, you still need enough ones, right? And so you need to identify who your ones are. I mean, part of Brad's challenge with with this election from him winning perspective is he was literally every voter in New York City's second choice candidate, right? Like he got about 12% first choice, and then I think like if you look at the map, it's like something crazy, like, it's a 6-person field, and I think 58% of voters had him ranked second. So, that's amazing. Like, he is actually now one of the most popular elected officials in the city of New York. But that many second choice votes doesn't get you a mayoralty, right? Like, you need enough first choice votes to cross the finish line. So I think first and foremost, you still really focus on getting as many votes as you can to rank you number one, and then the rest follows.
Was your campaign contacted by any other candidate campaigns wanting to be part of the coalition?
Our campaign was contacted by another candidate campaign wanting to cross endorse, not with Zohran.
Okay, so there were, conversations like that too about enlarging. That's interesting. So other campaigns also were looking at their numbers, I suppose, and thinking like we need to get together. Yeah.
Yes, the reason we rejected those endeavors is because it became very clear, given where Zohran was standing, that like without Zohran as part of the coalition, the only thing another cross endorsement would do is actually give Cuomo momentum. And so that outreach is actually really what led us to sit down seriously to talk about cross endorsing with Zohran, because we were like, okay, we're not going to do this. That would be unhelpful to victory and strategy. So let's figure out what we can do.
And when you said there was that New York Times article after the cross endorsement, that gets a lot of attention, obviously, that's a national outlet, really, but when did, the major like entertainment media came into this also? Did they contact you? Did you contact them?
They contacted, I don't know if Zohran's team reached out to them to see if Zohran could go on, and Colbert said, how about both of them? Or if they reached out to Zohran's team first. So I don't know exactly how it happened, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. So I just saw a question in the chat. What are the reasons to avoid cross endorsement and cross endorsing? And I would say, like, especially in a race like what occurred in New York City, where we have a clear, unacceptable candidate, like an unfit candidate. We wanted to make sure that a cross endorsement moved the needle to defeat that candidate. And a cross endorsement that together combined would not get anyone enough votes to do that would have been counterproductive.
Did you have any assistance in analyzing that kind of thing? I know you were previously a campaign advisor yourself. Did you engage any other consultants to help you with that analysis?
I mean, we talked to our pollsters and such.
All right, certainly your previous experience, I know, brought a lot to that. And I know when you and I talked previously, you said you didn't get any training before that first ranked choice voting election, right?
Nope.
Yeah, so you were thrown right into that. Was there any
Yes.
thought of coalition in that election, or was it still sort of like trying to figure, kind of run a more
It was
traditional campaign?
still very new. The weekend before Election Day, there was some talk of coalition. I think Andrew Yang did endorse Catherine Garcia, but she did not endorse that. But it was much more complicated, and there were no serious conversations at the level that we had this time. And there was certainly no like WFP rank the slate process or anything like that.
So if you can give us any inside story, given Lander's experience, do you think he might run again for mayor or stay in the country?
No, I don't think he's running for mayor again.
But certainly, as you said, his name is well known from this campaign. So even without winning, it's a way for candidates to get a lot of exposure.
Look, I will say no one has ever lost better than we lost that campaign. I mean, his political stock is higher than it has ever been. And deservedly so,
And for you, how was the campaign experience for you? Did you enjoy the RCV campaigning? Did it seem more complex to you in what ways?
Sure, it's harder to that. It's a little harder. It's a little less straightforward. And so sometimes it was complicated because also, an instinct as a campaigner is to try to knock your opponent down. And so sometimes we had to just like figure out, oh, we're not going to do that, right? Like we're only going to do that when it comes to, Andrew Cuomo, who is not participating in the slate. And so you have to be sort of very disciplined about that. And then look, it was the last 2 weeks when we were all working together was so much fun, right? Because it's fun to be on a team and see that energy and have voters react that way. So yeah, it was great. Highly recommend.
And yeah, certainly you have that savvy as a campaign professional. As far as training your teams, those canvassing teams that Terry was a part of, and the people who are organizing those, how did you handle that within your campaign, especially with the shifting ground?
Well, we spent a lot of time training our organizers, and I will say, our organizers were like, it was easy. It was slightly easy because, again, we had this sort of anybody but Cuomo vibe. So we could say, this is why Brad is the best candidate, and this is why we think you should. Have you heard of him, and why we're supporting him, etc. And like anybody but Cuomo. So Zohran's great, and Adrian is good too. Like rank these, rank everybody. And then the reality is, by the time the cross endorsement happened, the energy in the field, I mean, I feel very good about the campaign we run. Zohran unleashed energy and enthusiasm that I've never seen in my 20 years in local politics across the country and in New York City. It is unheard of to have 50,000 people canvass for a mayoral election on a given weekend. It is, I joked that since when the cool thing to do if you're a 20 something in New York on a Saturday afternoon was to knock doors for Zohran Mamdani. That is not the standard political process, right? And so that's actually when you're a field organizer and you're trying to get people for Brad and you see that and feel that, it is hard, even if you're enthusiastic about your candidate. So actually our field team and our organizers and most of our volunteers were incredibly enthusiastic about the cross endorsement because it made their jobs easier and made them feel part of something bigger too.
And were there, co-campaign events for the volunteer and staff too?
Yeah, actually the biggest one I would say is GOTV weekend and election day. For those who remember, was like a record heat wave. And so it was like 105 degrees or something on election day and that entire weekend. And so we, our field team, and volunteers, and Zohran's field team and volunteers coordinated like hydration stations, water deliveries, cooling stations, fans, all this stuff for all of the volunteers on both campaigns.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And also, David reminded me I talked up our pitch training, and David is going to be your trainer tomorrow night. So definitely don't miss that. So David, thank you so much for filling us in on New York State. Terry, the reporter from the ground, and Allison, what an incredible experience with that campaign. Congratulations, you really ran a beautiful campaign. And thanks for giving us your time when I know there's an event going on right now. This was very interesting, very informative, and inspiring.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Mhm.